How to raise the seed of Christ, what are the practical exercises to perform, to do, in order to feed it, nurture it, and what are the mistakes to avoid. Let's see all this in this video. The Christ seed is not a physical seed inside of us. It's in a form of consciousness. We can call it like a small light, or we can visualize it like a small light within us. And this seed has the opportunity, or we have the opportunity, to be impregnated by it or inseminated by it through a cosmic event which happens every month, once a time, per zodiac sign. So when the moon enters your personal zodiac sign, which is a little bit less than 3 days per month, in that time you can have the opportunity to start to nurture it, to accept it inside of you, the specific part of you where you feel the seed entering or being is just below the navel, more or less, okay? And usually, at least from my experience, when you feel this, there is like an energy of joy. It's like a light joy. It's a high vibration because it's a high consciousness, of course, and it's something you need to, of course, then care about, and this is what we're talking in this video. But the main point is this, that the opportunity is given every month for these 2.5, 3 days. And so if you're, for example, born in Leo, every month, you know, and when the moon is inside, is transits in your sign, you get this opportunity. And these dates are shown in our online website. You can find that easily, or in my book, Helios. And you can then prepare for this event and learn how to make it bigger and how to, you know, manifest it inside of you. And because the Christ seed is basically a consciousness that we all can have access to. We can compare the Christ seed to a seed of a tree that is, you know, underground, where it needs to grow. In order to grow, it needs basically earth, that is, let's say, minerals to make it easier. You need water and you need sun, that means light. And if we now transfer this symbolically in our body with the Christ seed within us, basically we need food, which would be earth, right? So the right food. You must eat food that vibrationally is as high as possible. That means if you eat meat, which is has a very low vibration, basically this kills the seed. It cannot be nurtured by it. The vibrational difference is too big, and basically you lose the seed. So you have to eat as much as raw food possible, or at least not meat, fish, you know, drinking alcohol and stuff like that. That brings us to the second point, is drinking pure water. So you have to avoid alcohol and milk and stuff that doesn't really help you detox and feel good and be hydrated. The third point is then the sun. We said that is, we need to practice the sunrise meditation, which is one of the 4 main practices that are connected with the development of the Christ seed. Basically, why? Because you need to develop and nurture your heart chakra, where your center of love is here. You feel love. Most of the body, the center is here in your heart. So why is this part important? Because from here you have to become a sort of a sun, a small sun inside of you, to beam this love to the seed, which I told you before is below the navel, and this nurtures and helps grow your seed faster, and helps also that the seed starts, putting roots and getting a bit stronger and more stable within you. And the other practices, there are four I said before. One is the sunrise meditation, is being taught mainly by the master Michael Ivanov. You can find a lot of information about it online. It's a beautiful practice where you, in the morning you connect to this sun, and you really start feeling its vibration inside of you. And from my experience, at least, the vibration that you feel is something very familiar, very similar to Christ consciousness. There are also very many masters and people that practice this meditation believe that in the sun live only high, very evolved spirits. Now, if you believe, of course, that in every planet or in every star is inhabited, of course. But now I'm digressing. So this is something that helps us nurture our inner sun, and it fills up with love, and of course this nurtures our Christ seed. The second practice, which is very much important in this case, is healing your traumas. Childhood traumas mainly, of course, because if you live constantly in fear, in anxiety, you have different issues like anger, or you could also be, jealous or stuff like that. Vibrations that are, again, too far from the Christ vibration, that also don't help you develop your seed within you, the Christ consciousness within you. So it's something that needs to be done. So anyway, anybody who is in this spiritual growth, on a spiritual growth path, on a spiritual path, is working on these parts most of the time, or at least has started doing something on them, and it's something that must be addressed, especially if there are these traumas that are very limiting to us. So that's something to be done. One of the techniques are learning on, through working in groups or with a counselor, what are your suppressed parts, which are traumatized parts, and putting them into awareness, and and accepting them and loving them. And there are different techniques to heal, but basically all of them boil down to one point, which is total acceptance and presence to that emotion, right? Which is there, suppressed or abandoned or hidden or whatever, angry. That's the biggest point. So that's the second. The third practice, which is important, is you need to work on alchemically inside of you by transforming our lower nature with all our flaws and, let's say, shadow parts into better parts, or let's say parts that have a higher vibration, okay, like joy or generosity. I'm not saying you must not feel or see or live your shadow parts that it's suppressing or avoiding. It's integrating them inside of you, okay? That's an important part also, because we cannot live with, let's say, very generally, with negativity, generally, with lots of negative thoughts, depressive thoughts, and thinking, that our seed will be nurtured by it, fed by those vibrations. No, it's impossible. And the last practice is also very important, is preserving your sexual energy. This is very important for men especially, so without spilling the seed, of course, very important, but also for women, but it's more connected to their monthly menstruation. I talk about all this in my book, Helios, but basically we cannot use egoistically our sexual energy, just using it for our, let's say, lower pleasures. Nothing against them, of course, but a Christ consciousness cannot be developed if we lose that energy with sexual practices that are detrimental to us and that feed our shadow parts, or even worse, that feed negative entities, energy parasites, and stuff that drain us energy and keep us in a lower vibrational awareness. So we need to be very careful about that. And one of the techniques is being continent. In order to develop this inner process with this tiny Christ consciousness within us, it's helpful to imagine that it's like a real human fetus, a real life within us, another life within us. This is something that women who had a child is easier to understand. However, also men can, by practicing the nurturing part. Why? Because in order to make this small, let's call it a baby, it's like as if we were pregnant. To help it grow, we need to give it the right attention, right? Like, when a woman gets pregnant and the news comes, the partner knows about it, the man knows it, and he has a change of how do you say? He changes his way of perceiving her. He gives her more attention. He's more, careful on what he says, and he is more polite, and he's more loving, and he's more tolerant, for all. That's an energy that the man who already had a kid usually knows about, has experience with it. So that's a bit the way of relating to this seed inside of you. And for women, the same thing is when you know that you're pregnant, you also change the relationship a bit to yourself. Of course, if the outer conditions are good, stable, and loving. So this is a bit the way you need to relate to yourself. And in fact, I personally believe, and also from my experience, is that when you feel you have it inside, you have a greater motivation to love and accept yourself as you are. In fact, one of the main keys to develop the seed inside of you is becoming the best parent you can. Let's call it complete. It's not the right word, but every one of us in their childhood had some sort of trauma. So no parent is perfect, as not even we are perfect. So all these flaws have created some sort of trauma inside of us, and we need to, compensate all of those flaws and be sort of a perfect parents, totally loving. How? As a Christ would be, that compassion, that presence all time, being present to yourself, to your feelings, to the Christ seed. If instead we repeat the same negative patterns that we have absorbed when we were kids from our parents, and we repeat them mainly, with ourselves, if not also with others, of course, but with ourselves, and we do this to this Christ seed, it won't work, of course. Because if, for example, our parents were intolerant, and we are intolerant with ourselves, guess who suffers when we are too rigid, with ourselves, the emotional part where the seed is. So this is a very important issue to address. The seed of Christ is a real experience. It's not just a simple theory or a fantasy. It's something with a bit of practice and the right preparation can be felt. And it's, of course, it's not something that you receive as a gift just without doing anything. Work has to be done, constantly, with discipline and with following certain rules. So it's basically a big responsibility. And even losing the seed, which happened to me, is not a pleasurable experience. Of course, it's not so devastating as for a woman when she has a spontaneous abortion. Of course not, fortunately not. But it isn't a pleasant experience. However, you feel also when you lose it. So I find it a very real experience. Depends also how sensitive you are to subtle energies, but I imagine that a person who starts such a process has already developed such antennas, let's say energy antennas. We cannot fool the Christ consciousness. I mean, you cannot cheat on him, or doing some practices and some not. It's because your every hour action, every hour emotion, every hour thought is connected to that consciousness. It is embedded in us totally. So everything you do influences your energy field, right? So how you feel, right? So that or will nurture and support the Christ seed, or it will suppress it or kill it, and you will lose it. This is an alchemic process, which is a slow one, and but it's one of those processes that I find very practical. And you will find more information about this practice inside my Helios ebook that you can download from a link which will be above or below the video. And it should be helpful towards your goal to immortality, or for whatever spiritual goal you're aspiring to. So thank you for watching the video, and see you soon.